I know a man who told himself for 3 years he would retire when the time was right. He died 14 months after he finally did. The time had been right 3 years earlier. His body knew it, his values knew it, his Sunday evenings knew it. He just never asked them. Quick note before we go further. This is general education, not advice for your specific situation. If you are over 60 and you are still grinding through the work week, here's the question this video is going to answer. Not whether you can afford to retire, whether you can afford not to. Stay with me because the most important signal does not show up until the end. And it is the one that decides whether retirement saves you or breaks you. Here is what the research keeps confirming. Most men do not actually decide to retire. They drift. According to retirement research published in 2024 and 2026, men tend to be unprepared for the non-financial side of retirement, so they slide into it instead of choosing it. They wait for permission that never arrives. They wait for a number that never feels like enough. And while they wait, the signals pile up unread. Now, if you came here for a financial planning video, this is not that. I want to be clear about it. Some advisors will tell you retirement is a math problem. Save the number, hit the number, hand in your notice. That view is not wrong, and financial readiness is non-negotiable. But it is incomplete. Because the people I have watched flounder in retirement did not flounder over a spreadsheet. They floundered because they had no language for the signals their body, their values, and their gut had been sending for years. So this video is not about whether your portfolio is ready, it is about whether you are. 5 signals, research-backed, none of them on a balance sheet. The first signal is the one your body is already sending, and you have been overriding it with caffeine for so long you stopped noticing. Picture this, it is 6:15 on a Tuesday morning, your alarm goes off, you slept 7.5 hours. You should feel rested, instead you feel like someone parked a truck on your chest overnight. You sit up, you blink, your shoulders are already tight before your feet hit the floor. By the time you finish your second cup of coffee, you are functional, but you are not awake, you are just upright. That is not tired. Tired is what you feel after raking leaves all afternoon. What you are describing is depleted. According to the American Psychological Association, chronic stress sets off something called hyperarousal, which keeps your nervous system on alert even while you sleep. The body never fully powers down. Muscles stay tense through the night. The result is the exact thing you are living. 8 hours in bed, 4 hours of real recovery. Now here is the obvious objection, and I want you to take it seriously. Before you tell yourself this is a retirement signal, rule out the medical causes. Thyroid issues, sleep apnea, anemia, low iron. See a doctor and check the boxes. Because if it turns out to be one of those, retirement does not fix it. The ice cream truck still drives by your house at 7 a.m. But if you have ruled those out, and the depletion is still there, your body is not malfunctioning. It is reporting, and what it is reporting is that the cost of getting through your work week now exceeds the recovery your weekends can deliver. That gap does not close on its own, it widens. Your body is the first witness, and its testimony is the most credible because it has no agenda. The second signal is harder to spot because it does not feel like a problem. It feels like boredom, but it is not boredom, it is something else. Here is the scenario. You sit down at your desk on a Wednesday morning. You open the same software you have used for the last 12 years. You open the same kind of email you have answered 10,000 times. And you realize with a kind of quiet shock that you could do this entire job in your sleep. The tasks have not gotten easier, you have just gotten bigger than them. Now think about your career arc. If you are 65 today, you started working when typewriters were still being phased out. The transition to word processors did not really finish until the 80s. The first networked email was sent way back in 1971, but most of America did not touch email until the 90s. Windows 95 came out in August of 1995, and that was the moment when your job, whatever it was, fundamentally rewired itself in front of you. You learned all of it, you adapted, then you adapted again and again. And the company got acquired, and resistance to new software during mergers is so common researchers write papers about it, but you swallowed that resistance and you learned the new system anyway. You did not stop growing, the job did, and now the gap between what you are capable of and what the job asks of you is wide enough to drive a truck through. You might be thinking, maybe I just need a new role. Maybe I should pivot. Carrie Hannon, who has spent her career writing about older workers, makes the case that staying current with technology and learning new tools is what keeps you relevant. That advice is real, and for many people it works. A new role, a new challenge, a new team. Sometimes that closes the gap, but ask yourself honestly, have you already tried that? Have you already taken on the new project, the bigger title, the lateral move? And did it close the gap, or did it just postpone the same conversation by 18 months? Because if you have already tried to grow your way out of this and the restlessness came back, The message is not find a new job. The message is you have outgrown the category. That is not laziness. That is not entitlement. That is a capability and meaning mismatch, and it is information. The third signal is the one nobody warns you about, because saying it out loud feels like a confession. Studies on aging and life priorities, the kind of long-running research that tracks people across decades, keep finding the same thing. With age, your values shift, reliably, predictably. The drive that was once organized around career advancement, recognition, promotion, the next rung of the ladder, that drive does not disappear, but it gets quieter, and in its place comes something else. A pull toward time, toward relationships, toward depth instead of breadth, toward people you love instead of people you report to. Picture a Saturday afternoon in October. Your daughter calls. She wants to know if you can come up for the weekend in 2 weeks, see the grandkids, watch your grandson's soccer game. 5 years ago, you would have checked your work calendar first. Today, you check the calendar and realize you do not actually care what is on it. The soccer game is the appointment. Everything else is a thing you have to negotiate around it. That feeling, that quiet reordering of what you treat as the real schedule, that is the values shift in real time in your own kitchen. Now I know how this can sound. In a culture that has spent 40 years telling men that ambition is identity, this kind of shift can look like quitting, like checking out, like a lack of drive. Some of the people in your life will frame it that way. They will say, "You have lost your edge." They are wrong. What you are experiencing is not the absence of motivation, it is the realignment of it. The research is clear that this shift is not a personality flaw. It is a documented developmental stage of adult life. Honoring it is not selfishness, ignoring it is the actual cost. And the gap between where your values have moved and where your life still is, that gap is not free, it compounds. Every Saturday you spend answering work email instead of being where your values say to be, you are paying interest on a loan you never agreed to take out. The fourth signal is the most concrete, and the one I want you to feel in the chest before you talk yourself out of it. The American Psychological Association and the World Health Organization have both confirmed that chronic work stress is not just an emotional state. It contributes to anxiety, insomnia, high blood pressure, and a measurably elevated risk of heart disease and depression. Your job is not just expensive in dollars and hours, it can be expensive in heartbeats. Picture this, you are 63. Your blood pressure is creeping up. Your doctor adjusted your medication twice in the last 18 months. Your wife noticed you grind your teeth in your sleep now, which is a new development. You catch yourself snapping at people you love over small things. None of these alone is a 5-alarm fire. Together they are a pattern, and the pattern points in one direction. So here's the counter-argument, and I want you to hear me take it seriously. Some people will tell you that the right job, with the right accommodations and a supportive manager, can make work sustainable even with chronic conditions. That is true. Phased retirement programs are also more available than they used to be. Reduced hours, mentorship roles, project-based work that keeps the income flowing without grinding you down. If those options exist for you, they are worth exploring. They are real, and for many people, they are the right answer. The edge case here matters. If your earning situation makes a hard stop impossible, ramping down through phased retirement is a legitimate middle path that the standard advice often skips. Run the numbers with someone who knows your situation. But here's the question only you can answer. Is the management sustainable, or is it just a slower version of the same trajectory? Because the calculation is no longer your salary against your expenses. It is your salary against the years it is quietly subtracting from the back end of your life. And no paycheck can refund those years once they are gone. That cost belongs in your spreadsheet. Most men never put it there. Now we come to the fifth signal, and this is the one that actually decides whether retirement saves you or breaks you. Retirement researchers have spent the last several years drawing a careful line between two different motivations to retire. The first is escape, running away from a job that is depleting you. The second is aspiration, running toward a life you have been building the case for. Both feel similar from the inside. They are not the same thing. The literature, going back through 2023 and 2025, identifies aspiration as the healthier motivation, the one that produces durable satisfaction. Escape on its own can leave you adrift on day 3. Now I am not going to dismiss escape. Sometimes a bad situation is the catalyst, and walking away is the right move. The pain of the present is a real and powerful driver, and pretending otherwise is naive. But escape alone is a starting gun, not a destination. If all you have is the away from, you will land in retirement, and find that the absence of a job is not the same thing as the presence of a life. So here is the test. I call it the Tuesday test. It is not what would you do if you could do anything. That fantasy question is too easy. The real question is this: describe a Tuesday in retirement. Not a Saturday, not a vacation, not the day you fly to Italy. A regular, unremarkable Tuesday in March. What time do you wake up? What do you do for the first hour? Who do you talk to before noon? What is on the table at lunch? What are you working on, learning, building, fixing, walking toward in the afternoon? Who is in your house at 6 p.m.? If you can answer those questions in vivid detail, with specific people and specific activities and a specific feel to the day, congratulations. You are not running away. You are running towards something real. That is the aspiration the research is pointing at. If you can only describe what you would not be doing, not commuting, not in meetings, not answering email, you are still in escape mode. That does not mean you should not retire. It means you have one more piece of work to do before you do. And the work is not financial. The work is identity. Build the Tuesday first. Now zoom back out with me. 5 signals. Body that does not recover. Job you have outgrown. Values that have moved without you. Health that is paying the bill. And a future you cannot picture yet. None of these are weaknesses. They are not character flaws. They are not signs you have given up. The awareness of finite time, the recognition that health is not infinite, research keeps confirming that these are among the most significant drivers of retirement decisions. They are wisdom, dressed in the clothes of fatigue. If you are a man over 60, sitting with this video, and 3 or 4 of these signals just lit up, you are not in crisis. What you are experiencing right now is clarity. The question is no longer whether something has changed in you, something has. The question is whether your life has caught up to it yet. Here is your homework, and you can do it tonight. Take a piece of paper. Write down one specific Tuesday in retirement. Where you live, what you ate for breakfast. Who called, what you built, be specific, be boring. The more boring, the better. Because boring Tuesdays are the test of whether you have a real life waiting or just a vacation fantasy. If you can fill the page, the path forward is clearer than you thought. If you cannot, you know what you need to work on next. This is general education, not personalized advice. Before you make any move, talk to a financial advisor and a doctor who know your full situation. They will see things a single video cannot. Which of these 5 signals hit closest to home for you? Drop a number in the comments, 1 through 5, not for me, but because naming it out loud is the first honest step. And if you are a man over 60, seriously weighing what comes next, the next video on the screen takes on the question this one deliberately left to the side. That next video covers the financial half. Most of the headlines you have read about retirement savings benchmarks are pointing at a finish line that almost nobody actually reaches. And the next video shows you what realistic readiness actually looks like, measured against the income you will actually need. That is the harder half of the conversation, and it is worth staying for.